It's just been nagging at us for just many, many years. There's interesting stuff in this area, and we want to know more. We realized that after many years of wishing we had the resources to have an archaeological dig done, at some point in recent years we said, we do have the resources to do this. Freeman store was built in 1859, and it was here all during the Civil War and then up to now. So you just know there's things underground that are going to be interesting. We did it in stages. We had a company from Williamsburg come and do the ground penetrating radar.
So with ground penetrating radar, basically they run the GPR machine over the site in parallel lines until they can piece together a flat picture of anomalies that are under the ground. There's a best guess on what's been identified under the ground, but you do not know until you dig. You can look at it as sort of a vertical slice through the soil, and it will show you what it detects is a variation in the density of soil layers. So like loose soil up against more compact natural soil deposits, that's detectable to the ground penetrating radar.
Ottery was one of the 3 companies that we took bids from, and they were terrific. What really attracted us to them is their public-facing aspect of archaeology. They really like it that we're on a very public site and that the public will be walking by all the time, and they enjoy that interaction and teaching.
We're working in a town park, and it's not fenced. It's open to the public throughout the period of time that we're digging here. And that actually is a great thing for us. Historic Vienna put up signage basically welcoming members of the public, visitors, to visit the excavations, talk to the archaeologists, and hear about what we're finding.
You read about archaeology, you go to museums, you feel like you know stuff, but you never see it.
We have these 1 meter squares that we've plotted very carefully. We're digging the soil out 1 layer at a time using hand tools.
You know, they really do use very delicate tools, and if need be, they really do use a brush.
And then we keep the materials that are recovered from each layer of soil separate. We run that soil through a sifter that's just a 1/4 inch steel screen. And that catches all of the artifacts that we can't pick up by hand while we're digging. And so from each level of soil, each layer of soil has its own little sort of assemblage of material culture that's kept separate and identified with that layer. And that tells the story of that layer. You know, what happened there and when, and what remains. And some of what we find is not old, but based on what each layer contains, we could usually tell when it went into the ground or what event it's associated with, whether that's historic or modern. These sites are really dynamic, and everything that happens historically leaves its trace. This site has been, you know, continuously occupied before, during, and after the Civil War. Because there's never been an archaeological investigation of this property, it's not known how much of a record that left in the ground. And so there's potential for all sorts of things to be retained under the surface here.
So this curve should continue this way?
It should be about 12 centimeters down.
So the archaeological process, it's really divided into a few different steps. So we dig enough to discover the period of time that the archaeology is associated with, the horizontal distribution and the vertical distribution, you know, how deep does it go, the function of the site, and then maybe most importantly, the integrity of the site. That is to say, you know, sometimes you could have a really rich archaeological site that can tell us a lot about how people lived in the past, and the integrity is compromised so that there's not so much that you can learn from it. And sometimes resources can be almost completely lost to archaeology, you know. So that's been the objective, to dig just enough to answer those questions, and that gives you all the information you need to sort of consider the future of the site. All of our crew are paid professional archaeologists, every one of them. And so they have the training in the background to accomplish that, to excavate the site while preserving all the contextual information and basically maintaining a record. What every archaeologist is told, and understands is that we have one shot at this. Any pit that we excavate, we have that one chance and we have to get it right. And there's always, you can never do it over again, and there's always some loss of information because we can't record absolutely everything. And frequently, when we find cultural features, we don't dig the entirety because there's no reason to. We'll dig a portion of it, and that provides a sample of the artifacts and enough information, and we leave the rest for some archaeologist in the future.
The kinds of things that the archaeologists have found are a lot of 19th century buttons, some parts of ceramic dolls.
We've found in one of these 1 meter squares, 50 or 60 fragments of these tobacco pipes, and they have manufacturer's marks on them so we can date them and identify where they came from. We found a layer of burned oyster shell and glass stemware.
And we all are just imagining a blowout oyster fest.
A party, a historical event that marked something. The objects don't matter even half as much as where we found them. Where we found them is everything.
As they examine all these things in more detail, all these artifacts in more detail, we'll know more. There'll be more clues about what they mean. And we probably don't know the half of it. And then at some point when they're finished with that and have written a lengthy report describing what they found, it will all come back to us.
Working with Historic Vienna has been terrific. Most often when we do our work, it's because someone needs a permit to build on a site. Here, there's no plan to, harm any of this after we're done, which is excellent.
You select those 5 spots and you find what you find, and you go, oh, if only we had more than 2 weeks, we could investigate this one or this one. So I think that we'll be able to have them back at some point and find out more. It's just all part of getting a picture of what Vienna looked like.